All right, what is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to Just Ball, and today we are going to be reacting to Bleacher Report's new NBA power rankings, where every team stands 1 month before the deadline. I did do my power rankings somewhat recently, and I won't be updating them again until after the trade deadline. So I'm intrigued to see what they have here, what teams have been trending up, trending down. I've done a lot of draft content over the last couple of days, so I kind of want to go back into some NBA content on the channel. But man, am I excited for the 2025 draft. So yeah, this is coming out on January 10th, which is actually the moment I'm recording this, because I wanted this. I'm glad actually that this is after the Cavs Thunder game. I wonder if that maybe differentiated them in the seedings. Do they have Cleveland number one? And I think as we go throughout this, I'll try to give like who I would have next up, basically, and we'll see how that goes. So we'll just hop right into it. The deadline is February 6th, that Thursday. I will definitely be live streaming over on the Strauss channel for that. So at number 30, to no shocker, we have the Washington Wizards. They are 6-29. Guys have been missing games left and right. They were a little bit more competitive against the 76ers. Shout out to Jared Butler in that game, man. But yeah, the Wizards are 6-29. They have a negative 12.3 net rating. And I don't know, like, it's just like Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole. They're not really guys that I want to watch. I enjoy watching Jordan Poole a little bit more than Kuzma. I'm just not a Kuzma fan for what his role is here in the league. I liked his Lakers role a little bit more than what I've been watching him in Washington these last few years. Like, Sars missed some time. Obviously, Carrington and Keyshawn George are coming with their ups and downs. Bilal shows so much potential, but he got off to like this great start. And then obviously he's cooled off a little bit as of late, but he's 20 years old. It's just, we're in like the darkest era of this Wizards rebuild. And we're just looking to the draft. I know I just mentioned the draft, but yeah, we're looking to Dylan Harper. We're looking to Cooper Flagg. We're looking to Ace Bailey. Somebody that could bring life and energy to this Washington Wizards team, because they are flat out the worst team in the league. They have the worst defense, and when you're watching them, the opposing team is probably going to drop their season high. But like I said, it's like we're in the darkest part of the rebuild. It's only going to go up from here. I expect them to be a little bit more encouraging next year. They just got to get lucky in the lottery and ace this deadline. Trade Kuzma if you can. They can get a first. I mean, they should have traded Kuzma last year. I think they kind of fumbled that. So next up, I'll think it's probably New Orleans, just record-wise, and that is the case. They are 7-31. I'd probably have them there if, like, we're just going off this year. I mean, Zion just came back, which is exciting, and then they ended up losing to Minnesota because I don't know. No, Zion played. Yeah, he played in that game, and they lost that game. And then they ended up, I believe, losing their game that he was out. They have a negative 10.1 net rating. It's just been injuries this year. It's a shame. And I also thought Zion looked kind of skinny when he came back, so that's pretty encouraging. Hopefully he stays healthy throughout the second half of the year. I know they're trying to be cautious with him as he just came back, but I don't want him to play a game, miss a game, play a game, miss a game. It's kind of like the Embiid situation this year. But this Pelicans team, I mean, I think they're going to be fine next year. They just have, like, one big question. Brandon Ingram, what are they doing with him? Are they going to extend him? Do they think there's going to be a sign and trade market this offseason? Because you can't afford to lose him for nothing. So I think that's something you're going to get to, but you're watching the up and down play. I think more up play from Yves Missi. I think he's been super encouraging this year. You'd like a little bit better out of Jordan Hawkins from what I've seen this whole year. CJ McCollum has been on a heater as of late. Hey, if you can get some like late trade value, trade him. Trade him as soon as you can. Even if it's for like, I don't know, I would love to get a first for CJ. But if it's like one enticing young player, if it's a first-round pick, oh yeah, I think you move in a different direction. He's getting up there in age. And for this team, I think you'll be fine without him next year, because you're hoping Trey Murphy takes that step as a scorer. You hope, I don't know, Jordan Hawkins is not going to be like CJ McCollum level, but he takes a step. Zion's healthy, we'll see. Brandon Ingram's maybe back, we'll see. But you hope also they get a top pick in the draft, and you add Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper to this mold. DeJounte Murray can put the ball in the hoop. I don't know. I think this Pelicans team is a weird construct, and that's what my big question with them going into this year. But just, it's been a disastrous year. You hope they're like the Memphis Grizzlies of last year. They retool. I spent way too much time talking about the Pelicans. If I had to guess next up, I'll say Utah or Charlotte. I would probably put, I think Charlotte's slightly worse, but let's see who they have. They have the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, so I agree with that, 8-27. It's really you're watching LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller at times this year try to carry this offense. For obvious reasons, I don't really care about watching Miles Bridges. I really don't, and it's a shame because he was an intriguing young asset before all off-the-court stuff, and it's tough to really care about that guy going forward as a building block. And I was high on the Hornets going into the year. I was excited about this team, but once again, LaMelo has missed some time. Brandon Miller has missed some time, and this team is too reliant on Bridges, LaMelo, and Brandon Miller creating their own shots. Mark Williams missed some time this year, and you didn't see anything really from Nick Smith at times. He had a nice game the other night, but we'll see if he capitalizes on that at all. They have a negative 6.2 net rating, and Tijan Talon is looking like he's going to be a multi-year project as expected coming out of the draft. Maybe one of the bright sides, they have depth at the center spot. Like Nick Richards has shown something. Mark Williams, like that game against Chicago was phenomenal. And then you have Musa Diabaté, who I'm a big fan of as a rotational center in this league. We'll just see what happens. Do they entertain trades for Josh Green? Is Micic going to be on this team? Grant Williams tore his ACL. I think it's weird because I think they also could benefit of somebody in this offseason. They haven't really shown that they're a free agency market, but LaMelo Ball is insanely popular as a player, and it's something you can capitalize on LaMelo and Brandon Miller. If a team wanted to trade for Miles Bridges, I would entertain that for sure. But this team is looking next year. I think them finishing this bad is disappointing because this was supposed to be their Detroit Pistons year, but maybe that comes next year. Next up, I probably have Utah or Portland. I think I'd have Utah here, and they do have Utah. Okay, so I agree with this so far. 9-27, the Utah Jazz. If you guys are watching on YouTube, that picture of Colin Sexton is very funny. This team needs to capitalize on the deadline. A lot of teams we talked about, like so far, Charlotte and Washington, and when we get to Portland, Chicago, like this is a seller's market. There's going to be 10 plus teams trying to buy at the deadline in the East and in the West, and there's not many teams selling. The teams I've talked about and a couple more, this is a seller's market. Colin Sexton I don't think he should be on this team after the deadline. I don't think Jordan Clarkson should be on this team if they can move him. I don't think they should trade Walker Kessler. I'm a fan of him. I am. I think you go into the offseason looking to move Lauri Markkanen. I think you revisit that. Now that he got the extension and he's had a down year compared to the last two, you probably lost some value on Markkanen. You should have tried to trade him last offseason, but maybe they don't. Maybe they think if they get Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper, them and Markkanen can make the playing tournament in the West next year, and that's perfectly fine. And Colin Sexton is under contract, so they don't need to trade him, but this team is never going to bottom out, I think. I mean, they're 9-27. They're not good. I like their head coach, Will Hardy. Bryce Sensabaugh has been good over the last couple of weeks. Keontae George as well. Hendricks obviously had the gruesome injury. He's out for the year. I mean, you're getting some encouraging play out of Kyle Filipowski, not as much as out of Isaiah Collier. So I think you're just going to go. I mean, nobody's a free agent, really. You don't have to move Clarkson. I mean, I don't enjoy watching Clarkson play. You can keep Sexton. He's not going anywhere. Like, he's a free agent after, I believe, next year. So you don't have to trade him. Kessler's not a free agent. Like, you don't have to trade anybody if you believe you can still end up with a bottom 5 record in the West, which is definitely possible. You just got to get lucky. You can't pick 10 again because you can't take another Cody Williams, another Taylor Hendricks. You need one of the franchise-changing guys in this draft, and there's a couple there. So next up, I would have had probably Portland. They have Toronto, 8-30 on the year. I'm not going to take a victory lap, but I was lower on Toronto going into this year, and Raptors fans let me know how they disagreed with that one. And I think I've caught a little bit of luck in that prediction because of all the injuries they had. And I'm excited about this team next year. I think they're not as good as New Orleans to do this like retool year thing, but I think this is fine if they end up with a top 5 pick. Because there's a lot of guys I would like on this team next year. Ace Bailey's a weird fit, but man, would I love Dylan Harper in the backcourt with Emmanuel Quickley, because Emmanuel Quickley, he's a good defender, and I think Quickley's been hurt this year so much. As he's been hurt, he's missed a ton of time, and I think as he's healthier next year, going to look better as a playmaker. And as just basically an overall defender. Scotty Barnes been banged up as well. RJ Barrett has taken strides this year. Same with Jakob Poeltl. You have the rotational guy, like the complementary connecting pieces. You have Dick. You have Agbaji. You have Mogbo and Shed. Like, these guys could fill in good rotational minutes for you. And then, oh man, like I would love Edgecombe on this team. I would love Kasparis. I would love Harper. And I would love Cooper Flagg on this team. And then I think we're really talking about a legitimate playoff team in 2026. But yeah, the Raptors have been up and down. You're watching like Jamison Battle play at times. Yeah, it's not been the most entertaining season. I think Baji just got hurt as well, which is a damn shame. I think that was against the Knicks. I didn't get to see how long he was out for. They're 1-15 in their last 16. So I would have Portland next, and they do. They're 13-24. Where are we with Portland? Are we in our Washington Wizards, like, dark part of this rebuild after Damian Lillard? Because they're winning some games. They've been a little bit more competitive as of late. Denny Diaz playing well. Man, you get a couple good Scoot Henderson games, and I'm like, is this time he's going to break out? Nope, we're just going back to these games where it's just like, he scores 7 points, he might go 3 of 7, and it's just like, he looks like a non-factor out there on both ends of the floor. But you're getting good play to Denny Diaz. I don't really want to watch DeAndre Ayton on this team anymore, and I promise, this will be more positive when we get to, like, the good teams, because there's a lot more exciting pieces on those teams in the way that they're playing. But I think Portland's got to figure out, like, You don't want to end up like Utah last year. You do, I mean, like, they're a little bit worse, but you don't want to end up with the 10th or 11th overall pick. They're not going to make the play-in tournament, but you know what I mean, right? Like, you don't want to end up with 8, 9, 10. You want to end up with 1, 2, or 3 in their rebuild right now, and they got to figure out what they're doing. I hope they're active at the deadline. I hope they see if there's a market for Aiden, Time Lord, Grant, even Anthony Simons. But some of the young guys, you could be a little disappointed so far with their development, like Chris Murray, like Scoot Henderson. And then I'd like to see a little bit more Ryan Repair. I'd like to see a little bit more Tumani Kamara as an offensive piece because we know what he can be defensively, and he's been a bright spot for the Blazers this year. 24, I would have, I'm doing this off the dome, so it's kind of tough. Would I have Philly? I mean, Philly's better than what their record shows. So I'd probably have, who's the other Eastern Conference team that's bad? Brooklyn. Yeah, I'd have Brooklyn next up. And they have Brooklyn, okay. 13 and 24 on the year. I mean, this team is only going to continue to get worse and worse. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries as of late, and they traded away Schroeder for somebody that's out for the year. They traded away Dorian Finney-Smith for D'Lo, who's now missed some time. You're watching one of the grossest rosters out there with Cam Johnson missing time, Cam Thomas missing time. I mean, shout out to Noah Clowney and Jalen Wilson and Tyrese Martin all getting these reps, but I will say the month of March watching Brooklyn Nets basketball is going to be brutal when Cam Johnson is off this team. I have no idea what they're doing with Nick Claxton, if they're going to trade him or not. This team wants to be where Charlotte is record-wise. They want to be where Washington is record-wise, and they want to just lose as many games as possible. So at worst, they end up with the 5th overall pick. And they gotta make up on some ground because their veterans were doing great to start off the year. I'm not the biggest fan of watching Brooklyn Nets basketball right now. But you know what? Shout out to Zaire Williams and like Keon Johnson, I think, showing something this year. And for those guys, I'd want to be on the Nets. This is the time where you can really shine and show to teams that you're going to reinvent yourself and you can find your role in the NBA. Next up, off the top of my head, would I have Sacramento or Philly? I don't know if there's another Eastern Conference team. Oh, no, I would have Chicago here. And they do have Chicago. All right, so we're kind of like on par. They're 17 and 20. I feel bad for Bulls fans. I do. This may be the most negative team that I talk about because at least these teams that we've mainly talked about so far, they're rebuilding. They want to, like, not lose, but they want to embrace the young core. They want to hopefully take the losses for the experience of the young core and then hopefully get rewarded with a nice draft pick. Chicago is doing kind of neither right now. And I want to see more Bruce Ellis. I want to see more just, I don't know. Or I guess I want to see less Zach LaVine and Vucevic on this team. And I'm sure, like, I'm going to give their front office the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure if they could have traded them by now, they would have. There's probably a reason why these guys are still on the team. His teams aren't desperate enough to trade for him, or they haven't been able to find that, like, pseudo partner to make these trades happen. But Chicago, what they don't have is any reason to finish with not a bottom 10 record, because if their pick is 11 in this draft, it goes to San Antonio. They lose out on the 11th overall pick this year. This year was the worst year it's been in quite some time because you have gone nowhere with this team. You're not going to be better with this internal core that you're going to be next year. You need to get younger. You need to get more athletic in the draft. We got to see more Bruce Ellis. I'm still a big Kobe White fan. We got to see where we're at with Dosunmu. We got to see where we're at with Giddey, but we're not going to get to that point if we're just watching. I mean, Patrick Williams is such a weird spot too, but you're watching Vucevic and you're watching LaVine cook every single night. I mean, they're good. I'm surprised there's no market for those guys yet, but it's obviously the amount of money they're making per year. Next up at, this would be the 22nd spot. I would say Sacramento, which is kind of, okay, they have Philadelphia here. I mean, yeah, I guess I probably would have Philly because Sacramento, they've actually been better than what their record shows, at least net rating wise. So they might be a little bit unlucky. And I love how Gershon Yabusele is the cover photo. And honestly, shout out to Gershon. I don't know off the top of my head his contract. I feel like it was a 1-year deal, and I wonder, I don't even think they're going to be able to get bird rights because I've been seeing some of my Sixers fans talk about they can't afford to re-sign him because some team may throw their mid-level, which is a shame because he's been their best bench player by a lot this year now that Jared McCain is out for the year. Paul George has been disappointing. Maxey, I think, has been like Maxey as you'd expect, but I think we're realizing he can't carry a team. He's very dependent on Joel Embiid, which is perfectly fine. There's only, 10 guys in this league that can carry a team in the NBA, and Embiid can, but Embiid's not been healthy this year. He's been in and out of the lineup, and maybe that's fine, and he's going to be fine enough to play how many straight playoff games if they want to reach their goal this year, but this team is not been enjoyable at times. They have been playing better as of late, and it will give them props to that, and you've seen a good Paul George game here and there, and when Embiid is healthy, he's still looking like he's the Embiid of the past, but this team right now has got to figure out what they want to do. I think do they trade KJ Martin in a first, or do they view this year as like, even if we give up that first, is it even worth it? Because what can happen in the playoffs, especially if they get matched up with Boston or Cleveland? It's not going to end well for them. It's not. Next up at 21, we have Detroit. Okay, the 19-19 Pistons. I don't know if I would have had them there, but you know what? 19-19. Shout out to Detroit. I think they just lost their first game of 2025, the calendar year, to the Warriors. And Cade's been playing like a freaking all-NBA talent, man. He's averaging 30 points around his last 20 games. He's given you like 9 assists, 6 rebounds, good efficiency, and they got to give him some help. Like Jaden Ivey, man, it sucks that he's going to miss a bunch of time this year, but you're seeing the athleticism of Asor Thompson and Ron Holland. Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. have been fine veteran additions, but they need offensive help. I'd love them as a Cam Johnson team. I thought about them as an Ingram or Levine team if the price was right. I hate them as a Jimmy Butler team, and I think they need to get another guy to Cade, because why not? Like, I know it stinks that if you make the playoffs, you lose your first round pick, but who cares? You've been like drafting in the top 5 for how long, or in the top 10? Let's go out and let's make the playoffs, and let's get Cade Cunningham on national stage, because you could beat Miami in the play-in tournament. You could beat Chicago in the play-in tournament. Indiana and like Atlanta may be tough, but you can beat those teams in the play-in tournament for sure. So let's just get Detroit in the play-in tournament. I'd like to see them higher at the end of the year. Next up at 20, we have Phoenix. Wow. I thought we were going to see Sacramento before Phoenix, but you know what? I agree. You want to talk about disasters? All right, I feel like I've been negative in this video, and I do apologize if I've come off that way, but this team is an absolute dumpster fire right now. And I feel bad for Suns fans because I know how bad it was in the 2010s. I rooted for the Suns as my Western Conference team. If the Knicks were out of it, which was every year, I loved watching Goran Dragic, Isaiah Thomas, Eric Bledsoe play. Steve Nash is my favorite player of all time. So I feel for the Suns. I do. But what they were in 2022 and how they gave up all of that after the disappointing loss for Kevin Durant, which it's Kevin freaking Durant. You make that trade, and then the thought to build the big three in the era where NBA teams are so deep and you need depth, especially with Kevin Durant, who's had his injury concerns in the past, and you go out and get Bradley Beal, that basically just does what Kevin Durant does and Devin Booker does on a lesser level. If you gave up that package for Derek White or OG Anunoby, I am fine with that. But you gave up that package for Bradley Beal that does what KD and Booker does on a lesser level. He's more expensive, and he has a no-trade clause. And now they're trying to get Jimmy Butler, but they would need Beal to waive his no-trade clause. But it's such a bad contract. You have to give up multiple first-round picks to get off of that deal, and they don't even have those first-round picks that they can trade. They're trying to operate like a 2K team, and it's frustrating. I love the Ryan Dunn pick. I love the Oso Ighodaro pick. I applaud them for trying to experiment with moving Beal to the bench. And they did win their last game against Atlanta, which was a good win and a feel-good win. And I want them to succeed. I want Beal to get some good playoff run because he never really got that in Washington outside that one round 2 loss with John Wall. And I enjoy watching KD and Devin Booker. But this year, it's been rough. And they got swept last year. They fired Frank Vogel, used him as the scapegoat. And then they just basically, like, they can't do much because the apron messes them up so much. And it's just Beal having the no trade clause is insane. I'm going to be more positive throughout this. Yes, let's go. Let's talk about the freaking Atlanta Hawks. 19-19, coming in at number 19. So Atlanta, I love the way Landry Fields, Kyle Korver, I believe, is the assistant GM, have just built this roster. I always thought Quinn Snyder is a good coach, and they should ride him out and not make a short-sighted decision and fire him. But they did what I think they should have done. They realized they messed up in the DeJounte Murray trade. And I didn't like that trade when it happened. And they've realized that it's a sunk cost. Let's trade him. And it's been working out. Tyson Daniels, good defender next to Trae Young. Jalen Johnson, breaking out. Maybe the best scorer on the team this year. DeAndre Hunter is having like a year 7 leap. Reese Shea has shown some 3-and-D potential. And this is all with like maybe Onyeka Okongwu not taking a step this year. Clint Capella is a free agent at the end of the year. Kobe Buffkin's been disappointing, but Atlanta found what they could do best. They can let Trae Young orchestrate this offense, be what he's just been his whole career. He's going to win the assist crown for the first time in his career, and he's got these lengthy, athletic, switchable wings that could throw it down, that can knock down threes, and they could play around him. And I want to applaud the team building for Atlanta. They don't own their first-round pick this year, so they want to make the playoffs or at least like lose the 14th overall pick, and they're doing just that. 2 thumbs up this year for Atlanta. Coming in at 18, we have the Sacramento Kings. They're 18-19 right now, but their net rating has been like actually positive this year. And they're a team right now trying to figure out their identity. I think they use Mike Brown as the scapegoat. I think it's more on Monte McNair, the GM, that has done a poor job optimizing this team around Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, and like I know going back to the Siakam like rumors when he got traded to Indiana, they didn't want to move Keegan Murray, and I thought that was kind of a rich ass, or from Toronto to ask for Keegan Murray. But oh man, I mean, I don't know if they probably couldn't have matched quickly or Barrett, but just adding somebody like Anunoby would have been huge to this team. I love the Devin Carter pick, and he's going to be a winning player, but the fact that they didn't play Keon Ellis is crazy. De'Aaron Fox is a free agent after the 26th season, and you don't want to risk like your best homegrown star, him and DeMarcus Cousins of the century, leaving you. Sabonis is still playing good. DeMar DeRozan, I didn't mind the addition. I really didn't, and it hasn't worked out, and he's getting up there in age, but he's not on a bad contract by any means. They just got to figure out their identity. I mean, if they were in the Eastern Conference, they'd be fine. They'd be fine 100%, but they're in a tough West right now, and they're going to be probably somehow an active team at the deadline. Next up, we have the Orlando Magic at 17. I think I'm done guessing here they have next. But yeah, Orlando at 17 seems kind of low. Like Indiana ahead of them, Miami ahead of them. I know they don't have, well, Paolo's now coming back, but Franz is out, Suggs is out. But yeah, I don't know. I would just have them a little bit higher because you're factoring Philly with all the injuries, I think. I mean, they have Philly ahead of like Chicago, even though they have a worse record. I just feel like Orlando should be higher because they just beat the Knicks the other night. I think double-digit point underdogs. That was a gross game to watch as a Knicks fan. But shout out to Orlando, man. They're just like pests, and they just win, and they're just gritty, and they grind out there. 22-17 without their top two guys and all the injuries they had. They lost Mo Wagner. It was like their best center this year. Goga stepped up. Tristan DeSilva stepping up every other night, it seems like. Anthony Black stepped up at times. And they're going to get Paolo back, who was playing. I mean, it's such a small sample size, but literally like an MVP candidate throughout his first 5 games. The Warriors at 16. I think Orlando's better than Golden State now that we have Paolo back, but Golden State got off to a great start. Buddy Hield, cover photo here, got off to a great start, and they've dwindled down a little bit because they didn't play the best teams to start off the year, and then once competition got tougher, their record started to dwindle. They're in a weird spot, man. I don't think they should trade for Jimmy Butler. I don't think it makes them that much better because you got to trade Wiggins and 2 other rotational guys to get to Jimmy Butler's $48 million. And unless you're adding, like maybe Markkanen could have optimized this offense to its fullest potential, and you probably regret not wanting to move Pods in those deals because Pods has now regressed this year in year number 2. Kuminga's a free agent, restricted at the end of the year. Steph's not getting any younger. I mean, I'm okay. Like, I don't want to say it, but I don't think you're winning at all unless you added somehow a Jokic, Giannis, or Wemby to this team. You're not winning at all with this current roster. You're just not. And you're not moving Draymond. You're not moving Steph for sentimental purpose. I just had to say Steph. But you don't really want to move Wiggins unless it's a noticeable upgrade. But you don't really have that right now. If you flipped Wiggins and Pods in the offseason, or say you flipped, I don't know, like Looney and Pods for Markkanen and you traded 2 first, like fine. I think that could be something, but you didn't take advantage of whatever that offer was out there. I like Cam Johnson on this team, but you got to be willing to part ways with either multiple firsts or Kuminga. We'll see if they're willing to do that. It's a tough spot because you want to get Steph another ring, you do, but the league is so competitive. Steph is not Shea. Steph is not Luka anymore. Steph is not Jokic or maybe even Wemby in terms of like what can carry a team in the playoffs. And Steph is still a good player, but I think as he could still be a 1A, you need a 1B. And you don't even have a number 2 right now. Like, Wiggins can't be your number 2. He's a good player, but he can't be your 2. Kuminga never took that step this year to be a number 2. They're going to be active at the deadline, I think, as well. Next up at 15, we have San Antonio. They're 18-19. I took their under this year at like 35. And I thought, like, this team is still not great around Wemby. And it doesn't matter. Wemby's been a top 10 player, maybe top 5 player in the NBA over the last like month and a half, basically. He's just carrying this defense, this offense. He puts up a different stat line, a different highlight every single night. He is so much fun to watch, and they have so much flexibility with draft picks, with young assets. And this year, I think they're playing with house money. Like, they own the Chicago's top 10 pick. They own, I believe, a Hornets protected pick in the lottery, which they're not going to get. But they own Atlanta's first. They own their first. They could just have fun with this year, and I think they're doing so. Yes, it would be nice to get Cooper Flag, and the way they're playing and Atlanta's playing, that's not going to happen. But I think you're just seeing Wemby transform into one of the best players in the NBA at, 21 years old. Next up at 14, we have the Miami Heat. I think this is a little high. I think without Jimmy Butler, and it seems like he's never playing on the Heat again, this team is not playing like a top 15 team. They did just beat the Jazz after getting blown out to them a couple games ago. Bam's been down this year. Hero's been up. Jaquez, the cover photo guy here, I haven't loved what I've seen from Jaquez in year number 2. Rozier as well. Like, you had Duncan Robinson. Khalil Ware had a good game the other night, or a couple games ago now. But I think you're just trying to figure out life after Jimmy. And I think you're going to, like, your pick is lottery protected. You're not going to tank. You're not going to lose games on purpose, but Miami's not beating Cleveland. They're not beating New York, Boston, Orlando, in my opinion, in a playoff series. Maybe not even Milwaukee without Jimmy Butler. And what player are you getting in return for Jimmy Butler? Unless you somehow end up with like a 3-4 team trade and you got Brandon Ingram on your team. I don't know. But either way, I think Miami's probably better off like losing in the playing tournament, getting the 13th pick, using that cap space when Jimmy walks or sign a trade, and you go all in next year, because I don't want you to ever bottom out and say you make the playoffs round one exit. You don't really improve too much. Next year, an injury or the team's not gelling well, you're giving OKC a good first round pick. Next up at 13, Indiana. Feels high, but Indiana's been good as of late. They really have been. Nembhard's back into the swing of things, looking like the player that they paid in the offseason. Halpern has been great in 2025 in that calendar year so far, and they're on a little bit of a streak now, and it's nice to see them. Like Thomas Bryant costed them nothing, and it's been an upgrade for sure after watching like Moses Brown, even Enrique Freeman start games for them this year. Miles Turner's a free agent at the end of the year, but this team is playing very good, and they'll have Neesmith back into the swing of things as well. Lakers at 12. Ooh. It's funny because like I saw every team's like win total from like January 10th this year to last year or through their first X amount of games, and the Lakers have not changed. And I think JJ Redick's done a good job this year, because I think he's developed Max Christie. I like the Dorian Finney-Smith trade for D'Angelo Russell. They did get blown out by the Mavericks the other night, but that was a tough game for them as well. And this team, like, it's so tough because I don't know, like it's like kind of unprecedented, because LeBron is most likely going to retire in a year or whatever. And usually when like a player retires, I don't know, like a player, like he's what, their second best player behind Anthony Davis. And usually when that player leaves you, he's getting traded or he regresses. He's just going to go from like the second best player on the team to not in the NBA. And they got to figure out life out of after LeBron. And I think they have something there in Reeves and Connect and Max Christie around Anthony Davis. And I think JJ Redick has done a good job in year number one with everything considered, and all the pressure on being a Lakers coach. Speaking of just also doing a great job this year with all things considered, the LA Clippers. Paul George walks, you parlay that into more touches for Norman Powell and Amir Coffey and those guys, and then you sign Chris Dunn, great defender, Derrick Jones Jr., a great defender. Harden's been carrying this offense at times. You just got Kawhi Leonard back. I'm excited about this Clippers team. I hope they're able to do something with PJ Tucker's contract at the deadline, because I would call like Utah, get like a Jordan Clarkson or one of those guys to match PJ Tucker's contract. Just gives you something back there. And they need to add some offense as well, with or without Kawhi. So Minnesota at number 10, they are 20-17. They've been up and down all year long. And like Anthony Edwards doesn't want to pass the ball. Basically, he's been good. He's been really good at times. Like, it just feels like a weird fit with Randall and Gobert in that front court. DiVincenzo has had his moments, but he's also had his rough stretches. They're trying to play him more as like a true point guard at times, and it's not really working out. Anthony Edwards is taking a ton of threes. I'm still like bullish on what the Timberwolves could be this year, and they traded away Karl Anthony Towns. That's been like their system for a while. So they're 37 games into the year. I'm going to cut them some slack in a tough conference, and I think they're going to still be a top 6 team in the Western Conference for the playoffs. It's just, where are we going to see this team improve over time? Is it just chemistry? Are they going to make a trade? A lot to figure out. Milwaukee at number 9. They got off to a bad start. Then was great, wins the NBA Cup, plays well, and then plays terrible after the NBA Cup. They're 19-16 right now. They moved Chris Middleton to the bench. They're a team I'm keeping an eye on as well. Like, Chris Middleton, legend there in Milwaukee, but they wouldn't be afraid trading him if that got them Jimmy Butler or something like that. We'll see if they end up making a notable move, if it's like a Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis, because Giannis is having an MVP caliber year. He's not getting any younger. They can't just waste another Giannis year, right? I wouldn't say like last year they wasted a Giannis year, but basically you lose in round one because he was hurt and Dame was hurt as well. But I think if there's a chance they think they could win it all this year, you got to go all in. Mavericks at number 8. I think the Mavericks are better than their record shows. I mean, Luka's hurt, Kyrie's been hurt, Daniel Gafford's been hurt, Clay's missed some time. They've had a plethora of injuries this year, and they've had some fun games without them. Like, I'm just watching Quentin Grimes, like, take over against the Lakers. I'm watching him hit a game, like, go-ahead shotter or dagger shot against the Portland Trailblazers. And I just love watching, like, Washington, Marshall, Quentin Grimes as, like, connecting pieces. Jaden Hardy's had a nice stretch as of late. So I'm still bullish on Dallas as well, and I still think they're the second-best team in the West. Denver is ranked one spot ahead of them. I think Dallas is better. I want these teams to play in the playoffs. I want to see a Jokic-Luka playoff series. We haven't gotten it yet, and I need it this year. What's going on with Denver? They've been good after their rocky start, and they were in all these trade talks. Murray's had his moments since getting off to that rough start, but are they going to be able to capitalize on Jokic having an MVP caliber year and arguably an historic season. Memphis at 16. 16. Memphis at 6. They are 24-14 this year. They have been a very fun team to watch with all their depth, and they're showing why depth matters in the NBA because Ja, Bane, like, guys have missed a lot of time this year on their team, similar to last year, and Gigi Jackson hasn't even played yet, and they're winning games in a good Western Conference. Their defense is there. Their offense is there. I wonder if they're like a consolidating team, right? Like, they got 10 guys in their rotation. Would they do like a 3-for-1 or a 4-for-2 to get a bigger name? I don't know if it's Jimmy. Well, not anymore because Jimmy said he doesn't want to go to Memphis. But do they make some type of move to upgrade their offense a little bit? But yeah, Ja came back yesterday and Thursday. He had a great game. And I think Memphis is like a dark horse in the playoffs as well. And like, I'm going to say something here. Last offseason, I was on a podcast as a guest. And I was on it with two people. And I'm like, we were talking about like future Western Conference teams for the 2025 season. And I brought up Memphis as like, I still think they're a tier 1 team with Denver, OKC, Dallas, and Minnesota. And they kind of shot that down. They were like, you know what? I think we got to see another year. And I was like, I still think they're insanely talented. They got the depth. I mean, I had no idea that we were going to see like Scottie Pippen Jr. and Jay Huff and Jalen Wells play great this year. But either way, I thought like they're like Zach Cleveland's a smart GM or president. Taylor Jenkins is a good coach. Ja's going to be back. It's not like he was like, well, he did have the shoulder injury last year. But Triple J, I think, is still elite defensive talent. And like, you're going to get everybody healthy again. And even with like Bane, I don't know what they do with him. But they've been, I think, very good this year. And I'm going to take a small victory lap on that one. Houston at 5. Houston, even with like not having a true number 1, even though Jalen Green's been good in the year 2025, some guys are just better when the year changes, I guess. Şengün had a nice game the other night. And this team is rolling right now. 13 games above 500 in a good conference. They're good on defense. They're not as good on offense, so I do wonder if they make a type of move. But Amen Thompson is electric to watch every night. And they're looking like they are one of the best teams in the NBA, not just the West. Knicks at 4 is kind of crazy. Knicks did lose to the Rockets earlier in the year. I don't think the Knicks have played Memphis yet. So I'm shocked. Knicks did beat Denver. But I'm shocked the Knicks are that high. They're number 4, 25-13. They went on a winning streak, and then they lose to OKC, and then they lose to OKC. I see my memory stinks. They lose to Orlando. They lose to Chicago, and then they did just beat the Raptors. I mean, OG Anunoby's playing the most minutes in the NBA. Or, excuse me, Mikal Bridges is playing the most minutes in the NBA. Josh Hart is right behind him. OG, Brunson, and Towns are all top 30 or top 35 in the NBA minutes as well. The Knicks bench stinks. Now, Miles McBride has been hurt. Mitchell Robinson is still hurt. They need to improve this bench because this team is going to be gassed or injured in the playoffs. And sometimes I'm watching this Knicks team and I just, like they can't blow out the bad teams at times. And they've just had some gross losses this year. Like Cleveland, they don't lose to Utah. They don't lose to Chicago twice. The Knicks have. They don't lose to Orlando without Paolo and Franz. And the Knicks have. And I don't know if I can take the Knicks seriously as a contender. They're ranked 4th here, which is high, but 3rd in the East. Because you got Boston at 3, which they ended up, I mean, they've split this year with Cleveland. They've looked good. They've had their fair share of injuries. They've had some bad losses, though, that we didn't see last year. It seems like they can't go on somewhat of a winning streak. They have, like, somewhat of a down game. But I think they're going to be fine. I think, I don't want to be the contrarian here, but I think I may end up going with Boston over Cleveland still, just because of the championship pedigree. But health does matter a ton. But, man, they have Cleveland 1, okay, because they got OKC at 2, 30-6 this year. I'll talk about Cleveland. But, yeah, that Cleveland-OKC game was just pure elite hoops. It was one of the more entertaining games to watch this year. OKC has been so good without Chad Holmgren. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, MVP frontrunner right now. J-Dub, borderline all-star. Aaron Wiggins is saving basketball, getting great defense out of Caruso, Casey Wallace, Kenrich Williams, Jalen Williams. The other one is back healthy. And yeah, we haven't even, like, AJ Mitchell is pretty good. We haven't even seen Nikola Topic this year, much of Ousmane Dieng. And this team is by far the best team in the Western Conference. I said that preseason, and I'm sticking by it. And Chet's not even back yet. And they could make a trade at the deadline if they wanted to move Kenrich Williams or Dieng or Isaiah Joe's contract. And at number 1, we have Cleveland. Round of applause for Kobe Altman. Firing JB Bickerstaff, which I guess looked like the right move. Hiring Kenny Atkinson, one of the best minds in basketball. You have the chemistry and the continuity of the backcourt and the front court. In the offseason, you draft Jalen Tyson. Max Strus bounced back with his efficiency, even though he's been injured. But Karis LeVert stepped up this year. Ty Jerome, what a freaking find. One of the best bench players in the league this year. Evan Mobley's taking a step. Their backcourt can score any given night. Garland's super efficient. Mitchell's having like one of the worst statistical years of his career, and it doesn't matter. They are 33-4. That is insane. This team could win 70 games this year, which is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Shout out to Cleveland this year. And that's going to wrap out the Bleacher Report power rankings here. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you agree with some of these? Do you disagree? Do you agree with any of my takes? Do you disagree on YouTube? And if you guys want to hit that follow button on Spotify or Apple Pod, links are in the YouTube description. And thank you guys as always for listening over there. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.